Welcome, everybody, to our week three recap of the year to date position leaders, along with the week four best and worst performer predictions. This is CFF Lists, and we are Jay Mill. I'm here with my partner, Willie B., and we're here to try to help you the best we can at making some lineup decisions, have a general discussion about who's performing the best among the year to date top performers and just give you some insight as to who we think you should sit and start this week if you've got these guys that are in the top 12 and top 16 at their position groups on your rosters. Willie B, looks like you performed the best last week. You picked a best performer in each of the four position groups, if I'm not mistaken. So congratulations on that. Nice job. I didn't do so well, but good job to you last week on picking a best performer at each position group.
Yeah, appreciate that. What was it, 10-6 the week before, and I think I had 9-6 this week.
Yeah, week one it was 10-6 in my favor, and it was 9-6. I only scored with picking a couple of the worst performers. With Pratt sitting out, and one of the tight ends, since they all did horrible. I think everybody got some scoring points for picking the worst in the tight end group. But that's since you mentioned the scoring, we'll start off with kind of a recap of how we do like to score it for each position group. We'll each pick a person that we think will perform the best and the worst from the top 12 quarterbacks or tight ends, and then the top 16 running backs and receivers. If the person we pick to perform best finishes first, we get 3 points. If they finish second, we get 2 points. If they finish third, we get 1 point. And it's the reverse for the worst. We're going to start off with Willie B going through the tight ends. But before we get your picks, did anything? I know something stood out for me that we've emphasized already on Twitter this week is six of the top 12 tight ends last week scored 1 point or under 1 point. There were five that actually scored zero. Urasek got a half of a point, shockingly. So, what do you think that is causing this, or what do you think's going on there with the tight ends, Willie?
Uh, what we've always said over the last few years is that I feel like the position is underutilized. I don't necessarily think it's the athlete itself. I mean, there's some talented kids out here. I just
Right,
don't think that offenses are using or utilizing the tight end as much as we might think that they will.
right,
And I kind of brought that up to you as far as, Bowers, and then we had Gatson who got injured, and
hmm
those guys getting taken in the first round. Is it really worth it, or is it just bad luck? What is it? It
right,
makes me always want to back off against taking a tight end too early in the draft for sure,
right,
because you just
right.
don't know what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, and that is a good point. Guys, I think are just being used inconsistently by their teams as well. They're just going with the hot hand when a game gets on the line. I think evidence of that is a guy who stepped into the top 12 this week with Michael Harrison from Colorado. You can see on the chart, like he jumped into the 10th position all the way from 115th. He was sitting there at 115th going into week three. His 28-point performance elevated him to number 10, and that was on a need basis. They lost Travis Hunter, ended up focusing more on Harrison. Down the stretch, he did get kind of the extra points in overtime, which always helps. But you see a few other guys jumping in from pretty far out with Ben Sano from 43rd to fourth. Jack Westover had 3 touchdowns and made it all the way to number two from 33 with his 3 touchdowns. I think he was the third highest scoring tight end overall behind Holker and Harrison. And from this group, I think Holker might end up being your most consistent. He definitely showed the skills, to catch the ball and run with it after the catch for Colorado State. But is there anybody on this list that you think we'll see besides Holker in the final top 12?
Ooh, that's kind of hard to say. I believe your guy, and I know I've talked bad about a couple of these guys. Um, Rex, I'm interested to see what happens over the next couple of weeks
Yeah,
with BYU. Obviously, I think Dalvin Smith will continue to stay where he is.
as long as he's not
Uh,
hurt. I mean, he does have some
yeah,
injury
right.
things
Yeah,
happen.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
And another surprise, and I'm glad we had to do a sort to make sure we get that week zero taken out, but stays from Notre Dame.
right.
I think he has a chance to remain there, and and Corey Dykes has been consistent. So those would be the names.
And Jurasek, he slipped to 6 from number 1. These are the frustrating parts of college fantasy football. You had a guy who looked like he was going to be in the top 3 or 4 all year long. Then Jurasek just ends up with a half of a point. It's
I
crazy.
I just can't trust. I can't trust their offense right now. So I mean that's the only downside to him. You just don't know what you're going to get, and it's been that way for a while for Stanford for
Right,
whatever reason.
right, right. Well, so clearly we got our hands full trying to predict the best and the worst at this position group. But Willie, we're going to kick it off with you. You can start with the worst or the best, but let's hear from you on both of those for the tight end group going into week 4. And keep in mind, to anybody listening, we are considering who they're playing. We've got the ranks up here from Fantrax against the position. So we'll be referencing that as we make our picks. But who do you got, best or worst tight end?
Well, only because we say that we don't know what his injury situation is. I still kind of believe in Troy's defense a little bit.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna go Smith, and it's a real close as far as who I'm gonna stay away from this week. So
Okay.
I'm gonna tag him up as my guy to avoid.
All right. And we mentioned last week we don't have to go with separate picks, so I think I'm going to agree with you.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep, yep. And I guess I jumped ahead there. I should have let you get all of your picks in.
No, you're fine. We can go back and forth. It doesn't matter. It gives me a little extra time.
All right.
And so until he proves us wrong, right now he's the hot tight end, the hot pickup. We had him as our number one pickup for the week, so we're gonna go Holker.
Yeah, you're making it tough on me to look like I'm thinking independently here because, Holker does seem like a very obvious choice this week. Um, you would think Michael Harrison, would be another one that's obvious after the week that he turned in. The fact that he just appeared here in week 3 with Travis Hunter, potentially that was the reason, you saw a little bit more of him with Hunter going down, but they've got so many weapons at Colorado. I'm afraid to go Harrison, until he proves himself maybe another week. Um, every one of these other guys has had an inconsistent, situation going on. Um, so yeah, unfortunately for the listeners, we're not going to have too much variety here with the tight ends. I think I got to go with the safe bet and pick Holker also is my choice for the best pick this week.
All right, that's the first time that's happened so far this season, but
I think it's the
it
first
is
time
what it
it's
is
happened
sometimes.
in 3 years. With us doing these, we occasionally have the same best pick, um, but we've never had the same best and worst pick for sure.
Yeah, and I think well, obviously this is the first time we've done the worst, but we usually try to do a little bit of variety, but sometimes it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to
So
sacrifice points for the obvious, what I think is the obvious pick there at tight end, and
there you
um,
go.
and and he is available in a lot of leagues. We had him in our waiver watch draft. He was at the beginning of the week. He was rostered on less than 30% of teams. So if you've got waiver pickups going on this evening or tomorrow, and you can get your hands on Holker, grab him as quick as you can.
And as of right now, he's still at 39%. So
Yeah,
all
exactly.
right. All right, so going on to wide receivers, and you'll be up first.
Yeah, we'll be up first. Let's see. As far as things that stand out, we're looking at movement within the list and guys we think are flukes and guys that we think are going to remain here. I think Horton, he had the spotlight on him in that game against Colorado this week. Just heard earlier, it was the 4th most watched game I think in the last 4 or 5 years. Period in college
That is
football.
crazy. That's
It
crazy.
was a 10 o'clock game, and you had over 11 million people tune in to watch Colorado versus Colorado State. If somebody said, I don't know that if you bet on that, last year you would have, won millions of dollars because people would have thought you were crazy. Um, but the spotlight was on Mr. Horton. He didn't disappoint. He was a top 5 preseason receiver for us, and um, he only had one game going into last week because they had the early bye. But it's nice to see him jump from 65 all the way to 1. I think he had 14 or 15 catches. Um, that definitely stands out, seeing somebody make that jump all the way from 65 to 1, and I think he's there to stay in our top 16. Looking at a few others, I think Robert Lewis making that big jump from 55 to 14 is another guy you'll see consistently. I think he might pop in and out because they do have a lot of weapons at Georgia State, but he's another guy we thought was a good pickup for the waiver wire down there at Georgia State with Robert Lewis. Um, and as most predicted, you've got both of the Washington guys here. Even with Polk getting his share of catches and Westover getting the touchdowns, you've still got the dynamic duo from Washington with Adunze and McMillan sitting here in the top 10. Again, I think think receivers are a lot more consistent and steady at the tight ends, and I think about half of these names in the top 16 right now are names you might see here at the end of the season. Also, what do you think?
No, I agree. One, I'm looking forward to seeing. I don't know if this is true. I need to do some research on this as far as what Michigan is doing now. Are they having coordinators take turns
I don't
during
know.
games
I
or
haven't
something
heard
like
that.
that? So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what happens once Harbaugh is back.
Hmm.
Um, what is the production going to be with Wilson? Are they going to, lean more heavy on the run game? Is he going to lose his opportunities? I mean, but 6 touchdowns on the season for him.
Hmm.
If they can at least keep it balanced, that's one name that should stay in this top 16. Um, love what Neighbors did last week, but
Yeah.
to me it's a wait and see. I mean he had the huge game, obviously.
Hmm.
Just a matter of can they be consistent? You know, this is going to be it for them in the SEC. This is their chance. So I mean,
Yeah.
I would just stick with the hot hand.
Right.
I love what Chris Mitchell has done.
Yep.
I mean
That's what I
that
said. The receivers, is totally opposite of the tight ends. You've got a group here that are not. There's not many flukes in this list. If I had to find one, that I think is not necessarily going to make it to the end. I mean, we got to see what happens with Trey Harris and his injury. Roman Wilson down at number 16, could be that guy that falls out, like you said. All right, so with that said, let's get into the picks on who we think will be best and worst. We've talked about the fact there's some tough decisions with so many good players, but because he is still at the top with targets, he's got a very favorable matchup against James Madison. I think 107th, at least according to Fantrax, against the pass. I'm going to go with my best as Terrell Vaughn from Utah State. I think he continues to be the focal point. It doesn't seem like they're offering too much in terms of other options there. So, yeah, he should remain the go-to guy, regardless of what's happening at quarterback. I don't think that matters. He's the standout guy there. As far as worst, this one again, we think there are a lot of good guys here. I'm going to go with Trey Harris, though. Again, I'm not sure if he's completely healed, and he's playing Alabama. Say what you will about Fantrax saying they're 87th against receivers. Alabama's defense always manages to tighten up as the season goes. So we're going to go Trey Harris as my choice for worst pick among the wide receivers.
Well, I was hoping that we were going to go back and forth there because I would have loved to have sniped that just to see what you do. But I have to agree, as far as the worst of the week, is that you have to consider the injury, and then you have to consider Bama's up against the wall here.
Hmm.
They have to step up, and it starts right here. You can't lose another game here in the SEC.
Yeah.
And
Since you mentioned Bam, I will say, like again, we've got the Fantrax versus position ratings. Last week we talked about needing to kind of do some cross-referencing with the overall passing and rushing stats, and Alabama is still 38th against the pass. So, however, Fantrax is computing that number. Sometimes it seems like it could be a little bit off based on, you know, if a team was kind of spreading the ball around and you had four receivers that don't get as many points, that might skew that average a little bit. So always cross-reference with, kind of the overall rankings, and Alabama's still 38th against the pass. So I think we're both making the right choice there.
I got you. Okay, so and then taking and I'm gonna say that Weaver would have been close, but we have to keep that injury in consideration, so that's why we're gonna both stick with Harris. Um, as far as the best, I believe I'm gonna go ahead and go with Horton. I,
Okay.
I like what I like the matchup that Gage Larvadain has,
Hmm.
but how long will he play? I think
Right.
Horton proved what he can do. They want to get that loss out of their mouths, so they played Middle Tennessee State, but believe that Horton should get enough to keep him into the top six of the 16.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, I've always talk about the fact that the FCS matchups kind of worry me, just because you're kind of making a prediction. Is he going to play a half? Is he going to play three quarters? So Larvadain, as good as he's been, he may come out and get six catches and three touchdowns in the first half, but you just don't know. And it should be, a softer matchup for Miami, Ohio. So I'm staying away from him for that same reason.
So we move on to the running backs.
Yeah, let's get into running backs. We get the return of Rasheen Ali this week after, bye week, an early bye week for Marshall going against Virginia Tech, which should be interesting. Um, let's see. Actually, he had the least movement, the least big jumps here. The guy that came out from the furthest was Kyle Monangai from 39th to 11th after a 33-point game. It'll be very interesting to see, how he holds up against Michigan, and if Rutgers, continues to feed him the ball as much as they have been, or if they try to figure out some other things against a pretty tough Michigan defense. Um, but anything stand out here among this group, as far as flukes and real contenders for you, Willie?
I'm not going to say anyone who is in the top 16 after this because, you know, we only had really one guy that was taken out of a group because of injury and only played one game. So basically, you have to play 51% of the games. So we did.
Right.
So we had one guy who was taken out, and that's going to be in the next group. But all of these guys, I feel like they deserve to be here. So I'm not going to say, and that's another reason why you don't have someone coming from the 80th spot and getting
Right.
into the top 16.
Yeah, again, we're
So,
getting into the more consistent group here. Even more consistent, it looks like, than receivers based on, the movement. You had a lot of guys that, were just barely outside of the top 16 that worked their way in. But most of this group, stayed the same. And the guys that jumped in aren't surprises, like R.J. Harvey. A lot of people had him as a top 25, top 30 guy going into this season. He is turning out to be kind of the true RB1 at UCF. Braylon Allen slipping a little bit. That's probably surprising to some, but he has, as good as he's finished the last couple of years. He's actually underperformed based on where people have ranked him. Like, he's typically been a top 7, 8 running back the last 2 years, and even though we think of him as being a very good fantasy running back, I think he's finished like in the RB 20s, or in the teens. So, which is great. Nothing to turn your nose up to, but he's about where he's been finishing on a regular basis here. At 15 versus a top five, but he'll still get you the numbers. But
well,
I think,
I
yeah.
think, well, hold on. I think what happened to him is that he actually, it was the week before that probably hurt him.
With
And that
Lucy,
dented the average. Yeah, because last week he had 94 yards and two scores. So
right?
I think that it's still that average of in him getting that 9.2 against Washington State is
Yeah,
really what hurt him.
yeah. And I think what I'm saying is, he's in the top 16, and I think he stays. I just don't know that he'll creep up much further than where he's at now. I think people tend to, overvalue what they think he will do in terms of maybe getting you top five running back numbers, where he's really more of a true top 15, top 20 running back. And not, in my opinion, maybe not. He's not consistent enough for me to be a top five, top six kind of guy. I
Hmm.
think he's about where he belongs and where he'll finish for the year.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But that said, I think it's your pick, to go first, your turn to go first as far as, the best and worst.
Ooh, there's some like I say, there's some interesting guys here. I'm personally shying away from Estime and only because of what Ohio State's going to do. But I'm gonna probably, I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's going to be my pick. I'm gonna shy away from him
Yeah, against
this
Ohio
week
State. Okay.
against Ohio State this week.
Yeah, and they're 20th against the run. They're showing up eighth against running backs. So yeah, it's probably Probably a smart move, and they've got other weapons that are emerging, so they don't have to necessarily just lean on him. They can spread it around a little bit this week if they have to against Ohio State.
I mean, so some may say Harvey, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to watch Kansas State a little bit closer over these next couple of weeks. I just don't see that four that we see right there is being truthful, but we'll see.
Right. All right. Do you want to pick your best? Or you want me to pick my worst?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So worst is tougher with this group because again, it's a lot of good guys here. Uh, yeah, man. Yeah, I hate to do it, but I think I'm gonna go Monangai. Uh, I'm hoping that's not what happens, but I think Monangai. It's going to be easy to key on him. Michigan's got the better bodies, probably the better athletes. So, as much as I think he'll still be valuable for the remainder of the season, I think this is going to be the down week for Monangai as the worst.
Yeah, I can't see that there should be in not much pushback against that.
Right.
Um, they just have to kind of prove that they can do it.
Yeah.
I know you're probably going to go Ali, most likely.
Maybe. I
That's
might
your
surprise.
guy.
Might surprise you.
Um, yeah. I know. I think I went Genty last week, and he came through. It was some push
Hmm.
in at the end, but yeah, I'm gonna go Rasheen Ali. I think he overtakes the number one spot after
Okay.
this week.
I hope he does. Again, that's I've got other roots there. That's where my youngest played, finished up last year. They're 127 against the run. They're pretty bad. I'm surprised. I actually was surprised Marshall's like a 6 or 7 point favorite. It puts a little bit of pressure on them. They are playing up against a Power Five team. So surprisingly, I wasn't going to go Ali, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad you believe in him, and it makes me feel good. I think I will, however, go with looking here. Um, I think I like Marks to step up again this week against a really bad, South Carolina run defense. Um, South Carolina is well, not really bad, but they're 87th, and Marks has proven to be pretty versatile. Um, so I think his diversity shines, and he moves back up. He fell from 4 to 16. I think he remains a big focal point on that Mississippi State offense, and he'll do what he needs to do.
Yeah, obviously they had a really tough matchup last week against LSU. He still had 75 yards, he just didn't get in the end zone.
Right,
So, and then he didn't have the receiving yardage that he had the previous 2 weeks. So, yeah, I agree. He should bounce back.
right. So there you go.
All right, so that leaves us with one position left. That's going to be the quarterbacks.
That's right. And in terms again, you again week three, year to date, week three numbers is where you see things starting to tighten up. You see fewer guys fall out of the top 12. It's tougher to make your way into the top 12 as these points per game start to smooth out and you see what, guys are really capable of. Um, it's nice to see Shador Sanders make his way into the top 10. I was kind of surprised he hadn't made it there prior, but he was just outside of that top 12 at 14. I think he's a guy that will pop in and out. I don't know if he can keep up the 350, 400 yard games all season, but I think he definitely he remains in the top 12 for most of the season, so it's good to see him. I think we talked earlier. We were going back and forth about Penix and Williams. Share the thoughts that you were giving me about whether or not Williams could finish number one or finish in the top three from your point of view.
No, I believe he can. I mean, they're number one offense. I think I said that on our other show. But we know what they're trying to do at USC. They're as much as anything else, it's about the recruits and Heisman's at this
Hmm.
point. And so when they pull that defense up, then we'll know if it's about championships. But I think it's going to be the race between these two guys
Between Penix and Williams.
in Williams. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Penix is having the start we all thought he would. He's got all the talent around him, so he's got options galore. Um, yeah, I thought you were saying earlier in the week you didn't think Williams could finish number one. So if I misinterpreted that, my bad. But
Yeah,
um,
I mean, we kind of did, and like I said, and that's why when we go back and we look at our numbers and how we're setting up our top 12 and our top 16, we throw out a couple of games. So, you know, Caleb's week 0 game is thrown out, so his number was a little skewed, and I'm
mhm.
so glad I caught that late last night. So his average was around the 30 range, so that put him, around 10 or 11 when
If you
he
counted
actually,
with week
if you,
zero in there,
yes, if you count the week 0, he was around 10 or 11, which is where he should not be because
hmm
none of us are really playing week 11.
right? So what?
Sorry, week 0.
Right. So in
So
other words, what you're saying is the same way we look at the year-end numbers and we don't include postseason games, whether it's conference championships or bowl games, because they don't count for the fantasy season. We're now excluding the week zero stats because they didn't count for anybody in here in college fantasy football world.
exactly. So
Okay.
and if we exclude that week 0, this is how he ends up being third
So this
and
is how he's
where he
performed in
should
games
be.
to count.
Yes.
All right, that's a good clarification. I'm glad you mentioned that. The thing I pointed out is, I think he remains the most consistent option. Last year, you had quarterbacks that would get 22 and then 42 and then back in the 20s. Caleb was almost in the 30s every single week last year, and I think that's something that he's going to continue to do. I don't. I think the way I put it to you is he may not finish number one overall among the quarterbacks in many weeks, but I think he still has the best chance of finishing number one overall at the end of the season from his cumulative totals. So that's that. But with that, who's picking first here for like the best? Is it my turn to go
Yeah,
first?
I believe you're first this time, and
Okay.
I'll take the opposite when you're done, whichever one you want to go first.
Okay. Um, it actually looks like a lot of these quarterbacks have some pretty tough matchups. Um, I think we've got him in the Kings Classic. It's going to be hopefully a great week for him as we
I have.
try.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to bring up one thing before you do make your pick.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Only because I didn't want to just add to our graphic just to add, one more spot and anything. But Dylan Gabriel actually has 29-9. So we have
Okay. So he's tied.
three guys at that 11 spot. So if you
Gotcha.
actually wanted to slip Gabriel in against Cincinnati in
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I will allow that.
Okay. I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to put faith in the guy that will hopefully lead us to a 4-0 record in the Kings Classic. Uh, which is Jaden Delora against Stanford. I think, he's capable of 40 plus points this week against a really bad Stanford team, um, who actually double check that. Yeah, 129th against the pass,
Oof,
121st against quarterbacks. Again, we are the only undefeated team in the Kings Classic. We want it to remain that way, so we've moved Delora into the starting lineup for this week, and hopefully he doesn't let us down.
I got you. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
I'm going to stick with the theme that we were saying earlier about the matchups. And Um, they're going to be in Alabama. I'm gonna say let's avoid Jackson Dart this week,
Mm-hmm.
only for that reason.
Yep. And they're 38th against the pass. Makes sense. 89th against quarterbacks, but we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I you could think that you might say, okay, well, it says Arkansas is first. Well, maybe, but I like what LSU is doing. So and Daniels can run a little bit also. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna definitely just take Dart instead.
Okay.
Okay, so your worst.
My worst. Um, oh yeah, you went worst instead of best there, so you went
Yes, I
opposite.
did. Yep,
Okay,
I
we're
went opposite.
trying to be tricky here. Uh, I think Dart ends up having to have enough volume where he actually does okay against Alabama, middle of the pack out of this group. I don't think he's going to be the worst. Um, Schrader, they might, have might do some damage against Army. So I think, he's again maybe not the best, but middle of the pack. Yeah, you know what? I'll think I'll go. I'll pay attention to that Arkansas first against CFF quarterbacks ranking. I'll put the worst over Jaden Daniels this week, and not
Uh,
because I think he's going to have a terribly bad game. Just looking at this list, it was tough to pick a worst because I think they're all really good quarterbacks who can have good performances this week. So, he will be the worst of the best this week, is the way I'll put it.
and I know we hyped up Caleb. I don't anticipate him having a down week. I wouldn't be surprised if he had 5 or 6 total touchdowns.
Right.
But I'm gonna go Caden Salter. The kid's
Mm,
actually he's gotten better and better and better. Went 22, then 35, and then last week he had 46.
nice
So
trend. Nice trend.
yeah, nice trend. And so they get Florida International, who by Fantrax numbers 91st
Yep.
against the pass. Then they come with a bye week, and then come back with Sam Houston. So he's going to be, as long as he stays healthy, he'll probably be in this position for a while. So here's a
Right.
name that we probably can see on this list consistently for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that's it. We've given you guys some things to think about in terms of our opinions on who's going to have the best weeks and the worst weeks. Hopefully you've got some of these guys on your rosters and can make your decisions accordingly by applying some of the input we've given you. It's always good to do your own research as well. There's tons of it out there. A lot of people providing great content in the CFF world. But we hope you keep tuning in to CFF lists on Twitter. And on Instagram, you can find us just under College Fantasy Football. And looking forward to a great week 4.
Thanks for watching and listening. Good luck this week.